to Chief Ramsey's point about accountability, more now on the Capitol Hill police. A new report about actions being taken against officers for their alleged roles in the riots. CNN's Alex Marquardt joins us now. What are you learning about these investigations?
Well, first of all, I understand that there are more of them than we initially thought. We're learning from a congressional aide on the House side that there are up to 17 different officers who are being investigated on the Capitol Hill police force. Most of the information that we're getting is from Congressman Tim Ryan, a Democrat from Ohio, and he's saying that 2 officers have been suspended. Obviously, deeply distressing, Anderson, to think that any of these officers could have been involved or sympathetic to these rioters, especially when one of their colleagues paid with his life. One of the officers who was suspended was seen taking a selfie with the rioters. Another was seen wearing a Make America Great Again hat. And Anderson directing the rioters, according to Congressman Ryan. And that's something that we've heard elsewhere. We heard from Congressman Jim Clyburn, who was really surprised, he said, and that something untoward had happened because rioters managed to find an office of his deep in the Capitol that was unmarked, that did not have his name on it. So that we have heard of people possibly being directed. Obviously, Anderson, this was a massive security failure, and as you and your guests were saying earlier, the former chief of the Capitol Hill Police has now stepped down.
There are also police departments, among other employers around the country, looking into whether anyone affiliated with them was involved in the attack. What's the fallout been like on that front?
That's right. This is a specific line of investigation from federal investigators. To what extent was law enforcement, current law enforcement and military perhaps among the rioters? And we know of at least 7 police officers who are being investigated by their police departments in 5 locations across the country: New York, Philadelphia, Seattle, Virginia, and Texas. The question is, were they just here as protesters, as is their constitutional right, or did they cross the line? Were they among the rioters? And of course, we have many, many photos that the FBI is now poring over to see whether they might have crossed the line. So far, Anderson, no one in law enforcement has been arrested.
And lastly, what's the latest on the arrests of those involved?
Well, growing by the day. So far, 20 people have been arrested on federal charges. The acting U.S. attorney here in D.C. says that number could go up to hundreds of people, and that the charges may include murder. It's clear that they're not done. The FBI, as I said, is working very hard. They've been asking for tips and help from the public. They've gotten thousands of those. They're going over all the closed circuit video from inside the Capitol, from all the photos that have been on social media to try to figure out who these people are. So you can be sure, Anderson, that the list of charges is going to grow both on a local and federal level.
Alex Marquardt, I appreciate the reporting. It's so sickening to see these images of people, battling pitched battles with police officers, and some of the images that have come out recently are just horrific. I think it's important to take time to remember those officers as well, whom we now honor as heroes of the attack. Earlier, Senator Sherrod Brown referred to one such person. Capitol Hill police officer Eugene Goodman is his name. He's been credited with helping to prevent rioters, attackers from getting inside the Senate chamber. We want to show you the video of some of what he did. It was captured by a reporter for the Huffington Post. Needs some setup first. Attackers had already breached the Capitol. Officer Goodman encountered them. They then followed the officer up several sets of stairs, and that's when this happens. Take a look. You see him here. Protesters are right behind him, right there. He looks to his left, and that's key. To his left is the Senate chamber, so he sees no police officers there. The Washington Post, in a detailed TikTok, says police at that moment were furiously trying to lock all the doors to the Senate floor and keep everyone inside safe. You see at least one attacker look at that direction, but Goodman lures the attackers in the other direction. All he has is a truncheon. To the right, without a doubt, Officer Goodman prevented an already tragic day from becoming far worse. Just before air, I spoke with Chris Krebs, a former senior cybersecurity official for the Department of Homeland Security, fired by President Trump after he rejected the president's election conspiracy theories. Much of our discussion was about what we heard before the break, about what he thinks law enforcement must now do to sift through the incredible number of potential threats directed toward government entities to prevent the sort of an attack we saw on Capitol Hill. We began by talking about the abrupt resignation of the acting Homeland Security Secretary Chad Wolf. the acting Secretary of Homeland Security resigning, does that have practical implications for security in the Capitol ahead of the inauguration?
So it's certainly not what you would want to see, right, in terms of consistency and continuity in a leadership position. My understanding, at least in the acting secretary's farewell letter, that the FEMA administrator will be stepping into that role. And Pete Gaynor is a Marine officer. He is an emergency manager. He knows how to run events, so he should be effective in that role. And the fact that one of the last things Chad Wolf did as acting secretary was move up the activation of the National Special Security Event designation to begin this Wednesday will allow for more coordination headed by the Secret Service.
Obviously, there's a lot to be learned about exactly what happened on the attack on the Capitol, and obviously a deep dive on the security failures is, just beginning, if not already well underway. What role do you think to what degree do you think this was a federal failure, a failure of, because from time and time again, we've heard warnings about, far-right extremists, and it seems like this administration has not taken that threat as seriously as some in the security field would like.
So there's no question that there's going to be a very in-depth investigation into the various breakdowns last week. If there were intelligence failures, operational coordination failures, issues with the National Guard. I think those you're seeing little bits and pieces fall out through the media over the last week or so. But I think we have to reckon with the fact that, one, the disinformation spread by the president and his supporters over the last several years has created a tinderbox situation, and that's what it was. I mean, Joseph Goebbels said if you tell a lie big enough and you repeat it often enough, people are going to believe it. And I think the election fraud, the rigging of the election, that it was stolen, is certainly a good example of that. And we have got to get the truth out there to the American people that this was a free and fair election. I think if the president wants to defend democracy and be the patriot that he thinks he is, he needs to come clean. He needs to tell the American people that he lied to them and that the election was not stolen. People need to go home and not show up either in Washington, D.C. or the 50 state capitals, as the FBI is reportedly telling folks.
It seems there's no way this president is going to do that. I mean, he is continuing to stand by this, even on the day of the attack. In the aftermath of the attack, he was saying, that this was the stolen election.
I don't believe. I think his track record would indicate that he's not capable of making that sort of concession and admission. But I think part of the unfortunate reality is he is one of the few people that many of these MAGA types will listen to. So that would always be the first preference. But in the meantime, there have to be other steps taken. That would include consideration of invoking the 25th Amendment, removing him from office, or an expedited impeachment by the Congress.
I mean, as somebody who's, worked in security, and certainly security on the election, and ended up losing your job because of your standing up and saying the truth about the election, how concerned are you about what lies ahead? I mean, for the next week or two, certainly, but even perhaps afterward. I mean, as you said, the FBI says there may be what they call armed protests planned around the inauguration, maybe in all 50 states. Do you see this as the beginning of some larger conflict, or is this the end of a potential conflict?
Anderson, this is the equivalent of ignoring that pain in your chest for a couple weeks, and then all of a sudden you have a catastrophic heart attack. We're on the verge of what I fear to be a pretty significant breakdown in democracy and civil society here. My hope is that through serious people in law enforcement stepping up and showing a visible presence, and at least in the course of the next 2 weeks, ensuring that there's no protest that turns into, well, let's be clear, this is not a protest, this is an insurrection. So let's make sure that we quell that now. But then over the next couple years, we have to continue chipping away at the disinformation and the propaganda and the lies that have been spread over the last several years to generate and motivate and incite these actors, these insurrectionists.
It's not just going to go away when Trump is out of office.
No, I don't believe so. No, I think the narrative's been set, it's been ingrained. I'm sure the president will continue to claim that the election was stolen, whether for fundraising opportunities or just to shield his ego. But this is, again, that's why he is ultimately responsible for this, and he's going to be the one that has to take responsibility for it. But I think, if you're a betting man, you don't make that bet. So we have to go look at some of the other options we have available. I see the District of Columbia Attorney General is looking at criminal charges. That is part of the toolkit that the next administration, that others are going to have to employ here to get some semblance of order back into the mainstream.
Christopher Krebs, I appreciate you talking in this difficult time. Thank you.